Lesson 3. The Infinity of Nothingness. We now invite you to consider the correlative principle of truth, in which is set forth the infinity of nothingness, chaos, the unmanifest, from which, under the law, emerges everything, the cosmos, the manifest. We have informed you that the law is not a pantheistic being, either breaking itself into bits or parts in order to create universes. Neither does it imagine, mentally create, dream, or meditate into existence a false and fictitious universe, all in its mind, as pseudo-occultism and pessimistic philosophies would have you believe. Listen to the aphorism. Aphorism 5. Other than the law, there is but infinity, which is nothingness. But in that infinity of nothingness, there is unmanifest, the latency, possibility, futurity, potentiality, and promise of manifest everythingness. It is the chaos from which under the law emerges the cosmos. It is the womb of the cosmos. Postponing for the moment the consideration of the distinction between the absolute and infinity, which is uncommon in ordinary modern thought, we wish to call your attention to the fact that infinity is not designated as not or as partaking of notness, but is spoken of as nothingness, which is a state of nothing. In the Arcane Teaching, the words nothing and nothingness signify no thing and no thingness, respectively. This may seem like metaphysical hair-splitting, but it is not. Not having common words to express uncommon ideas, philosophers must need split common words into shades of meaning and significance, or else remain silent with their thoughts unexpressed. In order to understand no thingness and a no thing, you must understand the meaning of the word thing to which these words are opposed. A thing is whatever exists as a separate object of sense or thought, in the sense of being and having apparent qualities which can be thought of in terms of sense perception, such as size, shape, form, etc. Something connected directly or indirectly with physical appearance, something of the relative universe, something having correspondence in experience. And no thingness must be the opposite of thingness. Therefore, the aphorism practically said that infinity is a latency that is no thing in reality, but yet has an existence of some kind, at least potentiality. It can contain not actually apparent to the senses, not that can be experienced, not that can be sensed, and not that can be thought of by the intellect, nor pictured in the imagination. In short, nothing that is capable of inducing a mental image in your mind. And yet it exists, if the word can be used, as a state of condition in which all is in latency, possibility, futurity, potentiality, and promise. In short, it is the unmanifest containing all manifestation within its latency, possibility, and futurity, awaiting the force of the law to bid it conceive, produce, and bring forth being. We shall learn about this infinite nothingness shortly in connection with another aphorism. Enough for the present to realize the words of the aphorism before us, which informs us that other than the law there is not, with the exception of the infinity of nothingness which exists in latency. Other than the law there is not in the absolute sense. Philosophies and schools of metaphysics have generally confused the meaning of the two terms, absolute and relative, and have used them as identical in meaning. The Arcane Teaching makes a sharp distinction between the two terms, however, not a difference based upon a metaphysical hair-splitting tendency, but because there are two entirely different ideas which must be expressed in these two words, and in spite of the customs of the metaphysicians, the distinction must be made. We do not wish to lead you into an extended metaphysical discussion, but we think that you should be taught to make this important distinction in the true meaning of these terms. The term absolute, in its true sense and essential meaning, implies an apartness, separation, independence, self-existence, self-sufficiency, supreme, unfettered, and free. The essence of the essence of its meaning is to be found in the words free, independent, self-sufficient. And when used in connection with the word law, it represents a supreme power, depending upon no other power, its own sovereign, and the ruler of all else without restriction. This conception we have in the absolute law, which is the independent, free, sovereign Lord of all. The term infinite has an entirely different meaning. in its true sense, although the philosophers and metaphysicians often add it to the attributes of the absolute, which is a mistake. The word infinite, in its true sense and essential meaning, implies a state of boundlessness, limitlessness, not circumscribed as to time, space, variety, possibilities, combination, shape, form, etc. Its essence may be understood by referring to the words from which it is sprung, that is, the Latin words in, meaning not, and finitus, meaning finished. In short, the word infinite means not finished, not complete, capable of unlimited manifestation and possibilities. So you see, while the idea of absolute means fixed, complete, independent state or condition, infinite means a state of endless and unlimited possibilities of manifestation and expression. The true philosophical idea of infinity consists of the conception of any sort of mental object as having the quality of quantity which cannot be exhausted by any succession of experiences, however prolonged or extended in time, space, variety, or number. By holding this idea in mind, you will never make the mistake of confounding infinity with absoluteness hereafter. The chief cause of the confusion arises from the unauthorized use of the word infinite in relation to power. Power belongs to the absolute and is not one of the attributes of infinity. Infinite power would mean an infinite possibility of the manifestation and expression of unlimited power, while absolute power means all the power there is, fixed, independent, and sovereign, unvarying and immutable, and not subject to change of degrees, etc. Absolute law is not an infinite capacity for expression of power. It is power in itself. All the great thinkers of all times, esoteric and exoteric, have agreed in this idea of the infinite being, the unlimited possibility. The best of the ancient Greek philosophers from Aristotle down held to this idea. As Schopenhauer said, it is already a doctrine of Aristotle that infinity can never be actu or actual given fixed, but only potentia, in possibility, latency, promise, and potentiality. And as Lewis says, if zero is the sign of a vanished quantity, the infinite is the sign of continuity. We trust that you now see that the absolute could never become relative or many, and that the infinite alone is capable of endless changes in shape, form, variety, in time, space, and number, and contains within itself the promise, possibility, latency, and potentiality of everything. The arcane teachers in the olden times illustrated this to their pupil by the following symbols. The figure 1 standing for the absolute and being fixed, independent, sovereign alone. By itself and in itself, it is incapable of multiplying or dividing. Multiply anything by 1 or divide anything by 1 and the thing remains unchanged. Multiply or divide 1 by itself and the answer still is 1, showing that the absolute cannot be increased or divided, even by itself. Subtract 1 from itself and the result is 0, showing that if the absolute were subtracted from it would cease to exist, and there would be naught left but the infinite nothingness. Then the teachers call the attention of the pupil to the 0, or infinite nothing symbol, that is, 0. In itself, 0 means nothing. Multiply or divide anything by 0, and the answer is always 0. Multiply 0 by itself, and 0 remains. The infinite cannot increase itself, for in its circle it includes all possibility. But divide 0 by itself, and lo, 0 into 0 goes 1 time. The answer is 1, showing that if the infinite be divided by itself, the absolute is found to be at its center, undisturbed, independent, and self-existent. The symbol of infinity in mathematics, however, is not 0, or unmanifest infinity, but the infinity sign, which indicates manifest infinity, the symbol always indicating endless continuation of action. Now the symbol of the infinite nothing becoming infinite everything, place a string of zeros as follows. You see that they still mean nothing. Now place 1, the symbol of the absolute, before the string of zeros, and we have a massive number, which we may enlarge to infinite number by adding the addition of zeros. Or place the absolute 1 behind the string, and we have 0.00 string of zeros 1, a very small decimal which may be carried to infinitesimal smallness by the addition of zeros. Thus we see by symbols that the action of the absolute law in the infinite nothingness produces infinite greatness or infinite smallness. Now that you understand that infinity means the infinite possibility of things, rather than an infinite manifest thing, you may be able to see that the infinity of nothingness of the arcane teaching is not quite so irrational as it appeared at first sight. In order to realize the truth of the aphorism still more forcibly, let us consider what infinity, even in the ordinary use of the term, really is. You will find that all thought, if analyzed, implies the nothingness of infinity. Non-being or nothingness was always regarded by certain schools of the ancient Greek philosophy as existent in a philosophical sense. Empty space was considered as truly existent as the atoms which afterward appeared in space. Plato regarded empty space as the matrix or mold in which the universe was formed. He held that there was possible an abstract realization of pure empty space, which is nothing, the void, which is the all-containing receptacle of creative energy, and in which being, first distinguished into geometrical figures, becomes the framework of the physical world. Scotus held that since deity creates the world out of nothing, then nothing must exist as an emanation of deity. Hegel distinguished between a nicht or not and a nichts or nothing. Theology has always held that deity created the universe from nothing, thereby implying at least a quasi-existence of infinite nothingness. Spinoza recognized an infinitely infinite, which is practically an infinite nothing. Plato said that space as a thing is incredible, difficult of explanation, most difficult to comprehend. And Zeno, the Eleatic, said, if space is a thing, it must be in something. And so in space, for everything that is in something. And so in space, and so on ad infinitum. Therefore, space is not a thing. So much for the philosophers, let us see what our own reason informs us. Let us first examine the idea of space. Space is the mental symbol for infinity. Consider yourself as standing at a fixed point in space. Then you must realize that there exists an infinite distance or extension in space from that point in an infinite number of directions. Leaving out of consideration all objects in space, considering pure empty space, and you must see that there is an endless extension possible, in innumerable directions, extension without end. Imagine a number of miles represented in a row of figures extending from Earth to the most distant star. Then multiply that number by itself, and then the product by itself, and so on, for a time equal to the number of years since the cosmic day began. Then you would have a number of miles, the written figure of which would fill all the space that your mind is able of even conceiving. Then think of a being traveling to the extent of that measurement. Would he then be near the end of space? No. The distance traveled by him would be as a mathematical nothing or zero compared with infinite space. No mathematician could have figured out the infinitesimal smallness of the fraction denoting the comparison, where he have to work continually since the dawn of the cosmic day. The calculation would be endless because the result would be infinitesimal, and at the end he would have to place a sign of infinity back of it. Just think, to be able to travel for all eternity through space without coming to an end. You cannot come to an end of space, even in thought or imagination. Try it. You will find that think as far as you will into space, there must always be infinite space beyond that imagined point. There is no up or down in space. Space is something with its center everywhere and its circumference nowhere. At the last, philosophy and science are compelled to hold that space is merely the possibility of infinite extension, or the infinite possibility of extension to the universal ether. In the end, ether is called the great mystery of science. It must be considered as a nothing that is a something. A leading scientific lecturer said and wrote recently, the ether is unconditioned, an entity of no properties, but of all possibilities. Or more exactly, not an entity at all, but an infinite possibility. And so we find even matter and things themselves arising from and being resolved into an infinite nothingness that is also infinite possibility. Now for a moment, let us endeavor to imagine the conditions or state of the infinity of nothingness, the unmanifest cosmos, during the cosmic night, and before the faintest dawn of the new cosmic day. The three cosmic principles are resolved into the condition of the unmanifest, but are not destroyed. There are nothing, but not. The three cosmic principles are substance, motion, and consciousness respectively. Substance has assumed its most subtle form. Infinitely rarer and finer than the finest ether, it is practically nothing, but yet exists in latency, possibility, and promise. Motion has assumed a rate of vibration so high that it is practically at rest, although not destroyed. It is still motion in latency. Consciousness has assumed the condition of a deep unconsciousness, a profound dreamless sleep, a swoon following upon the infinite ecstasy of the supreme cosmic consciousness of the previous cosmic day. It knows nothing, is conscious of nothing, for there is but nothing of which it could be conscious or could know, for all manifestation has ceased until the dawn of the new cosmic day. It is even unconscious of the presence and power of the law, although the law still reigns over it, and will awaken it once more, as it has many times before, in the eternal change of cosmic day and night. The cosmos sleeps in the condition of infinite nothingness, the unmanifest, the abysmal abyss, the eternal deep, the face of the waters, the void, the cosmic womb. The mother sleeps. The laws of cyclic rhythm have brought to her the rest of the cosmic night, but she will awaken and greet her Supreme Lord at the dawn of the cosmic day. From the cosmic womb will proceed the cosmic will, which will manifest the universe of universes, infinitudes of shape, form, and variety of things, life and being. In her existence is the promise of all that shall be throughout the ages and eons of eternities of eternities. The mother sleeps, but through the night as through the day, the law is immutable, unchanged, absolute.